We had an African summit meeting today with Africans from 12 different countries, West and East Africa today. Jonathan Jackson, our Rainbow Push spokesman, led a delegation to Mauritania inspecting the issue of slavery a month ago and was turned around, not entering, sent back to Paris. Reverend Sharpton and I are planning to take a delegation to Libya sometime this month to investigate the issue of slavery in Libya as it expands in West Africa. We asked President Trump to appoint an Assistant Secretary of State for Africa as soon as possible. Africa is 1/8 of the human race. The base of America's development was African slave trade, which lasted 246 years. There should be an Assistant Secretary of State for Africa. The U.S. and the West must help rebuild and stabilize Libya, which has been in a state of chaos since the overthrow and murder of Gaddafi in 2011. A coordinated effort by the West and African governments must make sure this does not happen again. In the 21st century, human beings, Africans, are being sold and auctioned for as little as $100. An estimated 700,000 immigrants, migrants in Libya. Libya is the main transfer point and trade for those Africans caught in that dilemma. In the last 3 years, 150,000 people have been made the dangerous crossing across the Mediterranean Sea from Libya, according to Time magazine. 4 years in a row, according to Time, 3,000 refugees have died each year attempting the journey. On Wednesday, Libya reached a deal with the EU and African leaders to allow the emergency repatriation of refugees. The point is, the African slave trade now has reached a boiling point, and we as a nation have a lot to do with stopping it. We want the UN to invade and to involve itself more diligent in the African slave trade. We want President Trump to appoint an Assistant Secretary of Africa. In the meantime, Reverend Sharpton and I will lead a delegation sometime this month to Libya to inspect the slavery situation and call upon the UN and African countries and our president to address it most directly. Reverend Al.
First, let me say that I'm honored to have been here for the kickoff of Founders Month for Reverend Jackson. As one that came out of his movement, we are honored to be here with him as we honor him on this month that he started the organization that birthed me and others. Reverend Charles Williams from Detroit National Action Network is with us. As Reverend Jackson stated, later this month, as soon as we have all the particulars, there will be a minister's delegation, clergy delegation going to Libya that we announced, and we appeal to Reverend Jackson to lead that delegation. And no one that we know has more international experience and more global respect than Reverend Jackson. And we are happy that he has agreed today that based on our adjusting schedules with his, that he would do that for us. Jonathan Jackson not only has been to Mauritania, he was this week in the celebration in Kenya. And we as a people cannot ignore our global responsibilities, and we were taught that by my mentor, Reverend Jackson. I might add that yesterday, the Prime Minister of Libya met with President Trump, and we do not know if President Trump even raised the question about slavery. President Trump needs to tell us, did he ask about slavery in Libya? Did he raise the humanitarian concern of American citizens? Trump should come forward. I understand he had a rough day yesterday, but he gave us a rough day, a tax bill that would try and, in many ways, make lopsided Dr. King's dream of fighting for the poor and fighting for the underserved. And that is the assignment he gave Jesse Jackson, dealing with economic equality. It is an anti-King tax bill to give corporations cuts, to give the wealthy cuts, and to keep Dr. King's bust in the Oval Office. He put it next to Churchill's. He needs to read Dr. King, not just have the bust in there. Thank you.
Johnson.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you, Father Reverend Jackson. In the words of Colin Powell, when they asked him how come they did not go further into Iraq, he says, when you break a country, you own it and you have to fix it. The United States has created this problem in 2011 in destabilizing Libya. This is a problem that the American public has created. We have to own it. The transportation of human beings, human trafficking, has made it into the new millennium, and this is an abomination for all those that have humanity. We are asking the president, Mr. Trump, to assert his force and power to call together the NATO forces, to call together the United Nations to highlight this. We're a better world and we're a better nation. The United States led the troops to remove President Muammar Gaddafi, and in the last 6 years, this problem has been festering, and from Mauritania to the Sudan to Algiers to all of the northern part of Africa, they do not have the resources, the coordination, the manpower to do this by themselves. So we're asking on behalf of the religious community in African countries and to human beings all over the world to address this issue. And I want to thank Reverend Jackson, my father, and Reverend Al Sharpton on convening this great body of people today that are concerned about their country, their continent, and we're going to galvanize people across this country to go into Africa, back to Libya. We're not afraid, and we're going forward, and we know that God's will be on our side.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, R. Chapton. Really, this is a great pleasure. My name is Olivier Kamanzi. I'm president of Africa Global Chamber of Commerce. I'm glad to be with over 12 African nations representatives here in Chicago, joining you to this call, because we believe we Africans, we need to own what's going on right now, but we are calling international community to join us, because Africans alone, we cannot fix it. This problem was created by international community, including United States. They created chaos when they took out Muammar Gaddafi without a plan. So we are calling the United States to be engaged, to join us, to really rescue those people who are in Libya. Right now, we have 700,000 African immigrants in Libya. We have 20,000 centers where we have those people are locked in. Every day we have different locations with auctions going on. We have 9 identified locations where auctions are taking place every day. A human being is being sold for just $400 US. A human being. We need to come together as a humanity, making sure we stop slavery and then we stop human trafficking. Really is a very, very serious issue. We need to address it. We need to stop it. We are calling for action. We need 3 things. Number 1, we need short-term win. First of all, is to rescue those people who are hopeless. We are calling the United States to really to help. Some of our countries are coming, led by African Union, European Union. We need also United States to join on board, also help these people. We are calling those people to go back to their own homes. We don't want to create a new refugees somewhere else in Africa. We want them to move back there where they come from. That's the first thing we need to do. Second, we need now to address root cause of what's going on now. Long-term strategy, what do we have now? Number 1 is to making sure, in terms of politics and economics, people are fleeing the individual countries because of conditions, living conditions. They're living because bad politics, bad governance. Those bad leaders, we have to hold them accountable. Second is to making sure economically we create jobs for those young people. Most of those are young people. We want to help them. Last, we are calling for a march. Next Wednesday, 2 weeks from now, we will have a rally in downtown. We have a march, a big march at Mayor Daley Center. Yes, 13th, December 13th. December 13th. We are calling everybody to come to join us from 10 to 12 p.m. We will be at downtown Chicago. We have a.m. 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So if we can have you, your leadership will be welcome. Thank you so much. Olivier Kamanzi.
Spell it.
Olivier. Last name is Kamanzi. Thank you.
Quickly, any other questions? Reverend has to get back to New York.
Reverend Sharpton talked about this being an anti-king tax bill. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Our struggles in the South was to end legal, racial, cultural segregation by race. But now it's the gap by economic gaps has even gotten greater. Too few have too much. Too many don't have enough, and the middle class is sinking. That's the cause for so much anxiety and so much demagoguery these days. This tax bill will make a few people much richer, and in the long run, it will bankrupt medical aid and public education and affordable housing. This bill does not serve America well, and we must fight until it is changed. All right.
I think that we must put out pressure. I think we must put the pressure on the Democrats in the Senate to do whatever they can, and in those states where we have voters, to put pressure on the Republicans, because it still has to go back to the House and the Senate to try and come together on this. So it's not over, but it is very close. We need to put pressure. We can send a big signal by winning a big vote in Alabama on the 12th, because it will send a real message. Reverend Jackson's been on radio every day, even as his doctors have been trying to deal with begging people and appealing to people in Alabama to come out and vote. And if you look at the numbers he did when he ran for president and on and on and on, if we come out and vote, we can turn the whole political equation around.
Without engaging in any more of the hostilities, now dividing people. There are now 904,000 blacks in Alabama eligible to vote, 700,000 registered. They vote their strength and their needs. Blacks and whites will find common ground. How strange it is that blacks and whites, when Alabama plays Auburn, learn to play ball together. You now have Honda and Mercedes-Benz and Nissan in Alabama now. That's because we brought the walls down. If we can play ball together and make cars and war together, we can also make economic justice together, and we will. Thank you, friends.
Reverend Jackson,
Let's-
has the cost of wars been factored into the tax bill already? The cost of the war and the war perhaps with Korea been factored into?
Yes, yeah. The adjustments for war and for tax for the rich is always available. Unfortunately, when you raise taxes in this way, you shift taxes, you shift the burden, you shift investment from the poor and the disabled, the very wealthy. I mean, you cut Medicare and you cut Medicaid, public housing, public education. This bill is disastrous, and that's why we cannot allow this to be seen just in racial terms, because more whites will suffer than black. Whether white or black, this tax bill is wrong. And too few get too much and too many get nothing but pain. Yes, sir.
Do you think that if we took better care of Muammar Gaddafi and more or less told him not to tell the people that he was going to do for Africa what he said he was going to do before he went, and if he had been more numb about that, then maybe we'd still be living, because
No, I don't. I think that. No, wait. I got it.
all I'm saying to you is Hillary Clinton told him, or told President Obama, that he would be leading from behind if he attacked Libya. And what really happened is that started the Civil War, intensified the Civil War until they finally killed Omar Gaddafi. And I think that there's something wrong with people like you who don't advise those people over there to do things. You are very astute.
Okay, is there?
I got it. I know what you mean.
You know what I'm saying?
First of all, we were wrong to attack Iraq.
I'm not attacking
Not the wrong target. Spent $2 trillion. We fast forwarded to Libya. We were wrong to join with France to overthrow Gaddafi. When you destabilize Iraq and Libya, you destabilize that region. They fast forward to Syria and got stuck in the mud. And so I think you're right. That Gaddafi was talking about, I was there when he talked about the African Union, about a common currency for all of Africa. His progressive stance did not sit him well with many of the Western adversaries of justice. The reason why Mandela went to Libya when he first got out of jail, because he was a factor in helping to free Mandela and to free South Africa. In fact, it happened to free SWAPO and at that time Namibia, and the African and the Congo as well. So I think you're right. I don't think his expression of desire for freedom in enemies justify them killing him. They should not have killed Gaddafi.
He should have lived. He was going to give us the United States of Africa.
I think that's. I think last one, yes, sir.
Reverend Jackson, real quick, how long do you think Trump will stay in office?
I don't know. I know he's scheduled to be there 3 more years. I hope that does not happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you.